it on?
It is on.
Hello. I'm making a YouTube video. Huge news. There's one from about 6 years ago on this channel that I didn't make myself. So probably don't get used to it, but it was voted the most popular on Instagram to do instead of an IG one. So here we are. A little race report from Worlds, which was a week ago as of today. Yes, it's been a week and I haven't done it since then because I've been on holiday. I've been relaxing, so don't come at me for that. To start off, I've got a joke to tell you. How do you know you're hanging out with the triathlete? They'll tell you. As I'm about to tell you about all my triathlon things right now. Yeah, so basically since the race I've been on holiday. We're in the beautiful Dolomites here. We've got another 6 days of cruising around and then I'm home and back into training. But the race for me, I guess we just get into it. So most of you probably already know who are watching this, so all 5 of you. I stayed in France, well, on the bike course for 5 weeks leading into the race, so in La Barca-Loop, which was at the base of the 18k climb on the course. So I went there straight from Lake Placid because I knew it was going to be really important to 1, get used to the time zone, and 2, get used to the course, and 3, just have some really dedicated time to trying to get fit for World Champs, because obviously Lake Placid, for anyone that followed it, I had a really bad race and I was not very fit. So we had a lot of work to do between then and Worlds to try and turn it around, and thankfully I have a very good base behind me, so we just managed to get there in time really. But yeah, in terms of the race, everything went really smoothly race week. We moved down from La Barca-Loop into Nice on the Wednesday, and then just did all the usual pre-race stuff, made sure the bike was all good, did the pro briefing and a few media stuff. And then the day before the race, when we were dropping our bikes off, they were like, just make sure you bring your wetsuit in the morning because it might be a wetsuit swim, which was a bit of a shock to most of us because the water had been really warm leading up to that, and I literally haven't swum in my wetsuit for 3 months. So them telling us to bring it down made me think, oh yeah, for sure it's going to be a wetsuit swim then. Anyway, race morning rolls around. I have my usual whatever 4:30 alarm, so it actually wasn't too bad, but I did the usual struggling to get out of bed. And yeah, had breakfast and stuff, and I was just I've just finished eating my rice in the morning, and this is becoming a recurring theme for me apparently. And I was talking to Lily, my partner, and I was saying, distract me, because I started feeling a bit sick and nervous, and then so she started talking to me, but it was too little too late, and I just ended up vomiting my rice and all my breakfast all over the floor. And it was like not a small vomit either, it was a huge. So for the next half an hour I had rice coming out my nose because I tried to hold it in. Yeah, anyway, so that was obviously not ideal and a bit of a faff. So I had to have a shower, we had to clean all that up, and I had to try and get something in because obviously I knew I couldn't race on an empty stomach. So I had 2 bits of jam toast, and then just managed to get 50 grams of carbs in a just drink mix as well. And then we ended up leaving super late. Transition opened at like 5:15, and I didn't know, but it was closing at 6:30, and I thought it was closing at 6:45. Anyways, long story short, I got there at like 6:15, so I only had 10-15 minutes. I got in there and they said you got 10 minutes to until you have to be out of this zone, ladies. So thankfully I'd already had everything organised the night before, so I could set up pretty quickly, but that's definitely the closest I've ever cut it for setting up transition, and then having to get ready and take your last little poor loo-poo. And then it was a long walk down to the swim start and our swim warm-up, so there was a lot of us, like 3 or 4 of us, who were running down so we could get there in time for the swim warm-up because we only had 5 minutes in the water. And obviously because I hadn't swum in my wetsuit, I wanted to make sure that my arms are sort of loosened up or whatever. Yeah, anyway, so we started just on sunrise, 7:16 a.m. It was like the start of the swim was hectic. Like I how it worked out is I ended up in like the middle of like the front line, which yeah, it means you basically get crunched, and I got crunched big time for like the first 400 meters. I was getting smacked because like the groups kind of came together. But I mean, that's kind of to be expected. I'm pretty sure that's happened to me at every single world champs. And so I did start near Alice Alberts and Jackie Herring, because they're who I knew I wanted to try and swim with. Anyways, and I managed to swim with them for the first lap. Oh, well, it's not really a lap course, but it's a M shape or W shape, whatever. Anyways, so for the first half of the W, I swam with them, but I was actually, was feeling like I was struggling, like I was on the limit. So I kind of, I don't know if it was a conscious decision or I got dropped, but either way, I ended up falling off the back of their feet. But I could see Nikki Bartlett was near me, and Ruth Assel as well. So yeah, I just kind of then tried to settle in and still swim as fast as possible, but also can't try and get my heart rate down a little bit. And I could still see the other girls in front of me, so I knew it wasn't too like out of reach to possibly be able to catch up to them. But I also was just like feeling quite confident in my riding ability. So, and I was more just like, yeah, you just got to get out of the swim and get onto the bike and get to work. And so that's what I did, came out of the swim, and like when I came into transition, actually when I first got out of the swim, I felt like really quite dizzy and lightheaded, but I think it's because it was like quite choppy. And I was desperate for a drink of water, so they had a little aid station. I grabbed a drink of water, and I got the cup in the bin as I was running past. I threw it like a little basketball shot, and everyone cheered for me, so that was first win of the day. And anyway, yeah, ran to transition, got in, saw that like there was probably about half the bikes there from everyone who started, which is kind of exactly where I thought I'd be. I thought I'd be in about the middle. Jumped on the bike, and that's basically where the fun started for me, because, you know, a part of the plan that I worked out with Jack, my coach, was like, you know, I know I'm going to be chasing for the swim. My job is to chase all day, never give up, and I know the course probably just as well as anyone, if not better. And so the bike was where I went to work, and then hopefully I'll have a good run to finish it off. Yeah, anyway, so first part of the bike course is like a few steep pinchy climbs, and then yeah, and I caught up to a few girls on that. I hadn't actually ridden that part of the course too much because it can be quite bad with traffic, but yeah, I actually thought it was worse when we drove it, and the one time I rode it than it was actually in the race, but probably because I was a bit fresher. So yeah, caught up to a few girls on there, and just, yeah, got into a rhythm. I was absolutely dying for a drink of water, because on my bike I just had, all 3 bottles I had were, had like sports drink in them, which like obviously you need for the carbs, but it's not very satiating, I guess, if you've got the Mediterranean salt hanging off your tongue from the long swim and your mouth's dry as. Anyway, so I knew that aid station was at 24 k's, which is kind of after the first, the first bit of climbing, I'd say, which is like, was about 400 meters total in elevation gain. And so I passed, I think, 4 girls, maybe a few more than that. And then grabbed a thing of water at the aid station, was loving it, except the one I managed to grab didn't have a bloody top on it, so I had heaps, and then I would put it in my bloody bottle cage at the front, and then it just was spraying all over me for the next 20 k's. But at that point, Anne Reichman went past me, and for those that know, she's a German, she's a really good rider, so I was really happy about that, because I thought, you know, if I can ride with her for all of the bike course, or at least some of it, then she's a really good person to sort of use. So yeah, I rode behind her for like, it was kind of like a nice flowing descent before we hit the main climb. And so it was great, like, because I'd ridden that a lot by myself, and you have to pedal pretty much the whole time, but because I was behind her, even like without the light being on Race Ranger, so out of 20 meters, I was still like being able to freewheel and just pedal a few times, which was really good. Unfortunately, a car got in our way, and they we both caught up to the back of it. Anne put her hands up and was yelling, and then I yelled really loud, and then they pulled over to the side. So that was good. And then we got onto the main climb, and I've been riding that really well in training. So and I knew that it's sort of broken up into like 3 20-ish minute sections. I knew first 20-minute section's the easiest, and the second easiest, and then the last third is the hardest. So but then I also was trying not to get dropped by Anne, and she freaking absolutely was belting it up there in the first like 15 minutes. I was like, oh god, does she know how long this climb is, or is she just way better than me? But thankfully, like, I was kind of yo-yoing off the back of her, but because I was like TTing in TT position in a few more sections than what she was, maybe just because I'd ridden the course a bit more or whatever. So I was sort of yo-yoing off the back, but then I was able to keep her in my sights for pretty much the whole rest of the climb. She broke away from me a little bit with about 10-15 minutes to go on the climb, because I was just breathing really heavily and like felt a bit wheezy, and I just thought, that's okay. I already knew I was climbing well. We'd been already past like 3, 4, 5 people on the climb, and then I also could see, obviously because of the nature of it, like the switchbacks, I could see the groups up the road, so I knew that I wasn't that far off, and I knew that there would be some people who would probably absolutely cooked their goose on the climb, because it's like an hour or a bit less than an hour. So I was just like, okay, just be sensible, like get your fuel on. Like this is still only 65 k's into the bike, so there's still a long way to go. Even though it felt like I was absolutely flying by, it was really stimulating, which is really good. Anyway, so crested the top of the climb, and then it like plateaus out, and there's a few descents and stuff. And I caught up to Alice Alberts and Danielle Blymel on that next section, and they were both clearly struggling a bit. Poor old Alice wasn't having a good day, and unfortunately we also got stuck behind a car doing a really tight turn on one of the descents that was like across the road. Had obviously gone onto the course and realised they were on the course, and then stopped like horizontally to the road, which we were coming down and like going 60 k's an hour with a massively tight turn. Anyways, thankfully it was alright, like we'd washed off enough speed that it was fine. And then basically the rest of it, the rest is like, from there's like probably 30 k's of a little bit undulating, and then an out and back section on the plateau where you can see people. So we had another little descent, which I got caught behind a car again on the switchbacks. And then on the out and back section on the plateau, I caught up to Jackie Herring and Lauren Brandon and Beck Clark and someone else maybe. Anyways, but you could see on that section where everyone was, like, so I could see that Kat and Laura and Marjolaine were all riding together, and they were 15 minutes in front of me, and you could tell that they were moving on the plateau, because as soon as you turned around there was a massive headwind, and like even if you're riding legally in a group, obviously going into a headwind it's going to be easier, because they were all, it looked like they were all sharing the workload, and from what I heard they were all sharing workload, which means obviously they get to go a lot faster. Anyways, and so I could see Ruth and Nikki Bartlett and had all like formed a group, and I was sort of like 45 seconds a minute behind them on the out and back section, so I was like, hopefully I can catch up to them on the plateau. But they were obviously working well together, like obviously they're all extremely good cyclists. So anyways, and then I caught up to Hannah Berry, who unfortunately she was just getting on because she just pumped up a flat using the CO2, so then she rode with me, and we hit the first like main descent, and unfortunately went around the corner and I saw Anne Rushman, like she'd crashed, like there was a photographer who was on the side like telling us to slow down, and she was like off the side and she'd obviously crashed, and I could see like her whole left side was completely grazed up, so I felt really sorry for her because she was obviously having a very good day. anyway, it later turned out that one of the bottles she had in her back cage had fallen down and hit her back wheel. And when you're going 60 k's down a hill with like some pretty tight turns, that's probably always going to result in a crash. And I think she was probably very lucky that it wasn't on one of the sharper ones with like a bloody cliff face on the other side. Anyway, so I was quite cautious on that little descent section of the course, and then after that just went a bit sandy in the TT position, and I knew Ham was behind me. I had a few terrible switchbacks, like freaking like I was doing a truck around the corner, but I think it's just because I was a bit tetchy, because I was worried about a few cars, to be honest, just because like obviously I'd had a few, like there'd been a few cars in front of me already, and then yeah, just didn't want to crash, because I was like, shit, I'm actually in a good position, because I counted out on the out and back section that I was in 11th, I think, or 10th. So I was like, shit, I've actually written into the top 10 here, which, to be honest, I wasn't thinking I would be able to do on the bike. I thought where I'd make my move into the top 10 would be on the run, if anything. Anyways, and then we hit the last climb, which is 15 k's. It's a really beautiful climb. Han still, well, I found that this afterwards, she still, like her tyre was still a bit soft, but so she fell off my wheel on that climb. I was still climbing really well. I actually wanted the climbs to keep going because I was loving it. Went past one more girl on that climb, and then like basically it's like an hour of descending up and down sort of thing, and I literally, it was so weird. It was like I was just out there on a training ride by myself again, because there was no one around, like, because even though I was only a minute behind Ruth and stuff, like, you can't really see them, because when you're descending, you're going so much faster. So, yeah, I just was pretty conservative on the descents, if I'm being honest. I know I can descend well, but I also didn't want to take any risks, because I knew I was actually having a good day. And I knew hopefully that my like medium descending would still be pretty equivalent to most people, except maybe some of the top 1-2 girls. So yeah, I just tried to get in as much fuel as I could, and then got back in, and then I caught up to Fenella on sort of the last 15 k's where there's a big headwind. There was a big headwind from the airport back towards transition. And yeah, just tried to get in all the fuel I needed. So I actually ended up having about 800 grams of carbs on the bike, which is a fair whack. I think I worked out 130 grams per hour. But I had been doing that in training, so I was pretty confident that would be fine. And I knew that the bike course was hard, so I wanted to make sure that I was on top of that. And so for those who care about numbers, I lapped my watch after the last main climb, because then obviously there's a fair bit of descending. So when I got to that, I was normalised power of 228 watts. So that was 4 hours 10 or 4 hours 20 into the ride, with I think my average was like 218 or something like that. So I mean, for me that's like good. Like we thought I would be able to normalise around that. And then by the time I finished the ride, my normalised power was about 219 watts. And I think my average had dropped all the way down to like around 205. So nothing spectacular, but still pretty decent, I think. Just because there's so many sections where you're not pedaling. So, and then got onto the run, and I saw Lilio, and she had a little sign, and she said, "You're in ninth place," and which I thought, I knew I was in the top 10, so that was really good to see. Got onto the run. I started having a little bit of a wheezing issue with my breathing again, but I was still running quite fast, so I just thought, like legs wise and whatever, I felt fine, and hopefully obviously it had settled on the bike when I'd started getting wheezy, so was pretty confident it would settle again on the run. And I pretty quickly passed Ruth, who unfortunately was walking, and she ended up DNFing. So so then I moved into 8th place, and I could see Lot up the road sort of thing, but it took me a long time to catch her. So yeah, first 2 laps of the course, I felt good. I felt like I was in control. I wasn't really looking at my watch, just sort of going off feel. But when I went through the half marathon mark, I saw that I'd gone through in like 1:27, I think. So whatever that is, I think that's 4:10 pace or something like that. So I was like, yep, okay, you're doing really well. But then, yeah, I was trying to take on fuel, but I hadn't been taking on a heap in that first hour and a half because my tummy was a little bit funny getting off the bike, and I was like, oh, well, I've had heaps on the bike, so like I can just take it a little bit slower for the start of the run, let my stomach settle, get in some water, get in a bit more electrolytes. Anyways, and then I had like we have a pro aid station, so you can get a bottle every lap, and I grabbed a bottle, and I'd been running with it for like almost a full lap, and just before I got to an aid station I had like this much left, and I necked it and then threw it in the bin, and that was at like 23 k's, and I was like, yeah, all good. And then like 2 seconds later my guts like dropped, and I was like a K later I just was like projectile vomiting all on the ground. Which seems to be a recurring theme, but I was like stop, but projectile, and then I started jogging again, and then a few times I had to stop because I was and then I was running along going fucking, and I think I'd just gone past Lot then, maybe. Yeah, I think I'd gone past Lot. So I think, yeah, I'd gone past her a few k's earlier, so I moved into 7th, and I was like, oh god, I'm on here. And then I started spewing, and so yeah, I just was like, oh god. And then like 2 k's later my legs really started hurting, like 25 k's in, 26 k's in, and they just were like really hurting, like that really sore achy feeling you get. And so I obviously slowed down quite a lot. Well, it felt like it slowed down a lot. There was also, like, for those that don't know, it was a 4-lap course, and like on the way out it was a tailwind, but it's slightly uphill, and on the way back is a massive headwind, and like that 3rd lap I was like not having a good time into the headwind. I saw Lily and was like, oh, I've been spewing, blah blah blah, and she was basically like, dig in, like, you're in 7th, like, don't be sook. She didn't say those exact words, but they came from the coach by her mouth pretty much. And yeah, so the next like 8 k's I was absolutely battling. Yeah, my legs just felt really sore. I felt like quite glycogen depleted. But thankfully I made the decision. I was like, right, like, because I could see on the out and backs, I could see like after Lot there was like quite a bit of a gap. There was like the next girls were like, you know, probably 5-6 minutes behind where I was. So, and at this stage I only had you know, sort of 12k 14k to go. So I was like, okay, well, they have to run quite a bit faster than what you're running. Like, I've slowed down, but I haven't slowed down that much. Like, I'm still running like sort of 4:40 4:30 you know, pace. So I made the decision I needed to walk every aid station and make sure I got some cola, and also take a few more electrolyte capsules, because like that really achy feeling I've got in my legs before has been because I've been electrolyte depleted. So yeah, so I made the decision to do that, and thankfully after like 3 aid stations of having a bit of Coke every aid station, I started to feel a little bit better. And I also heard Lot closing in on me behind me, which put a little bit of a rocket up my bum. So yeah, it got to sort of like 8k to go, or even 6, and I started feeling a bit better, and I actually started running pretty much back to normalish, as good as what I've run the back half of any marathon, I think. But I was like still in a state of like race mode. Like, you can't like even think about the fact that you're coming 7th place right now. Like, a few times on the marathon I was like, oh my god, I'm coming 7th, and then I was like, no, don't think about that, like, because then I started feeling really bad, and I was like, oh god, I've like stuffed this up. And it's like, and then also like Laura and Kat were obviously a long way ahead of everyone, so I was like, oh my god, like, they're so far in front, and they're doing so well that, yeah, it's like, funny when you feel like you're like far behind the actual winner of the race, but then it's like, yeah, there's a lot of different circumstances that go into those performances. Anyways, I was just very surprised that the gaps were so big. But then when you actually think about it, like the bike course was very instrumental in creating those gaps for people. Anyway, so I was like, there was a little banner, AG1 banner on the ground, and I was like, I knew that was with 500 metres to go, and I was like, when you hit that banner, then you can start thinking about the fact that you come 7th in the world. Yeah, anyway, so went down the finish chute. It was like super good atmosphere. I was still like, only sort of just letting myself believe the fact that I'd come 7th. So anyone who saw my finish line reactions, they were pretty, there was a lot of emotions, that's for sure. And then basically as soon as I got the celebration out of the way, I felt like absolute rat shit, and had to have a little sit down and a big spew, sorry to the ladies whose feet I pretty much spewed on, but it was kind of her own fault for being squished against the fence where all of us were. And then, that was it. Saw Lilio, thankfully. She managed to sneak her way in. And then spent the next 2 hours in drug testing with all the other top 10 girls, which was kind of nice because some of them, like, I got to see some of the girls and have a bit of a debrief with them about how the race went. I was particularly stoked for Nikki Bartlett, who came 5th, who had a very long winter of injuries last year and hasn't done many fulls, and she absolutely slayed it, so that's really cool. And obviously Lot, because although she's Dutch, we claim her as Aussie because she lives in Queensland, and she had a PB marathon too, so that was really cool to see as well. So that's pretty much it. Came 7th in the world, went to drug testing, tried not to shit myself while I was also having to pee into the cup. And then, was sore as hell for 3 days afterwards, and then just sort of getting back into a little bit of jogging now, but now we got a plan for the rest of the season. I'm excited to hopefully do some back end races, because although it feels like I've trained a lot this year, I haven't necessarily raced a lot, so I'm excited to do 2 or 3 more races at the end of this year and try and slay it. So we'll see. Thanks if you watch this, or to the 5 people that are going to watch it, and I'm excited to keep you all posted, and also thanks so much to everyone who sent me messages or reached out. It's been really awesome, so cheers.